God bless you, Jeff. Thank you. Outstanding. Please be seated. Oh, for heaven's sakes. I appreciate it very much, South Carolina. Jeff, thank you. So a while back, Jeff called me up and he said, "Hey, Joni, I've got an opportunity for you." And I said, "Oh, tell me a little bit more." And Jeff said, "Well, I have this faith and freedom barbecue." And I said, "Well, Jeff, I love faith. Who doesn't? God bless South Carolina, right?" I love it. I love freedom. Gave 23 years of my life serving in the military for our freedom. I love it. And then when it came down to it, South Carolina barbecue, had to have it, so here I am. Thank you all very much. It really is great to be here, and Jeff had mentioned that my husband spent some time in the military. He is also a veteran, 28 years active duty service, retired as a command sergeant major. Way, way, way back, okay, maybe not that far back, but my husband Gail served as a drill sergeant just down the road at lovely Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And yes, thank you, Gail, molding young lives. But then returned a number of years later in the mid-90s to serve as a command sergeant major, once again at lovely Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So I actually lived in this beautiful state for 3 years during the time that my husband was serving at Fort Jackson, and I truly enjoyed it because you know what? Iowa is home to me. But South Carolina, your folks, the people here, are so much like my folks back home. You are good, grassroots conservatives, and I love it. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you so much. So I'm going to start by saying thank you to Jeff, Congressman Duncan, for being such a great supporter. Thank you, Jeff, of supporting all that is fine and good in this country. And it's important that people stand up and recognize the hard work that goes into everything that you do every day to keep your faith and your promise to the state of South Carolina and to our great nation. So thank you for having me here tonight. I want to thank the governor as well. Thank you, Governor, for your words in supporting life. And I have this later on in my talk, but I want to bring this up right now because I believe it is so important. It's important to me that we do support life. And this last Saturday, the governor of Iowa, she is a new governor. She is a dear friend of mine, Kim Reynolds. She and I had a great honor bestowed upon us on Saturday. We were being inducted into the Iowa Women's Hall of Fame. So thank you. So there were 4 of us being inducted, 3 of us Republicans. I love it. But the important thing is that Kim and I have stood up for life. We are unshakable when it comes to supporting life, and I feel that that is really important. And you know what happened on that day that we are being inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame? We had protesters outside protesting the fact that the governor and I were being inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame because we supported life. Who do you think those protesters were? Planned Parenthood. You know what? I'm okay with that, though. I'm okay with them protesting me. You know, as long as I'm moving around the state, they're following me everywhere I go. But at the end of all times, I can stand proud because I know, and you all know, that we are on the right side in supporting life. So thank you for that. I think that work is very important. Now, I had a number of remarks here, and I do want to hit some high points, and then I'm going to talk a little bit from the heart because I think that's really important. A few of you may know that a number of years ago, when I ran my first ad running for the United States Senate, I wasn't known at all, other than in my little state Senate district, which is really rural, very rural. I grew up on a small farm in Montgomery County, Iowa, and that ad, it got quite a lot of attention across the United States. It was Squeal was the name of the ad, and I'm going to spare you a lot of the gory details, but I did grow up on a farm castrating hogs with my dad, and so when that ad ran, it did get a lot of attention, but as it should, because the point of the ad was that when I go to Washington, D.C., I'm going to make them squeal. And yes, and we are going to cut the pork. So that's one thing that we have to do. And Congressman Duncan's been working on this for a long time too, making sure that we are held accountable for what's going on in Washington, D.C. And folks, we are facing nearly $20 trillion of debt. And so it's really important that we focus on what the federal government should do and what the federal government maybe shouldn't be doing. And so we have to provide oversight and be that watchdog, hold those purse strings when we're watching the federal government, because we do need to cut the pork. Don't you agree? It's much better served as South Carolina barbecue, most definitely. I do want to bring up a couple of successes that we have had in Congress, and some on the Senate side as well, just specifically. Number one, I don't know that we've really talked about one of the greatest accomplishments that has happened this year. We have a new justice on the Supreme Court of the United States. And we held the line firmly in the United States Senate because we believed it was so important to gain that seat. It was important that we replace Antonin Scalia with someone that would emulate his ideals and his thoughts. And we were able to do that with Justice Gorsuch, which is really, really important. So many folks have said, oh, this seat could impact us for the next 10 years. And I push back on that a little bit because you know what? That one seat on the Supreme Court of the United States will not impact us just for 10 years. It will impact us for my lifetime, for my daughter's lifetimes, for my grandchildren's lifetimes. The decisions that the court makes today will impact us for a very, very long time. So it was so important that we elected a Republican president, and one that we knew would select the right person to serve on our court. Thank God for Donald J. Trump. So I want to thank all of you for working so hard to ensure that that happened. And I know in Iowa we did the same. We made sure we were turning folks out by the droves, getting them out to the polls, making sure that we supported our candidate in that election cycle. And it worked, and it will impact generations. That one simple nomination and appointment. Generations. So what I would like to do now is I'm going to step back in time a little bit and go back. I was born and raised back in Red Oak, Iowa, southwest Iowa, very rural area. And my folks were farmers. And so they taught my older sister, my younger brother, and I to work really hard. And I had no idea. Jeepers, you could have asked me 5-6 years ago, and I wouldn't have known that I would have been serving in the United States Senate. I just didn't see that in my cards. Back home in Montgomery County, you know, we dream kind of big. I guess I thought that I would go to Iowa State University, I would graduate, I would marry a farmer, and I would move back home, which I think would have been a noble goal. You know, my mom was a farmer's wife, and I admire my mother very, very much. You know, she got us through a lot of really tough times. Hard work and determination, the drive and desire to do better, that's important, I think, for everyone. So way back on that farm in Montgomery County, I was taught to work hard, to have that drive and that inspiration to move ahead, to do just a little bit better tomorrow than I'm doing today. That's what my folks taught me. So I worked construction with my dad during the summers when he had time off of the farm. Helped him do construction. Of course, when we were on the farm, I was expected to do all those dirty, horrible jobs with the hogs, you know, that a lot of folks do back in Iowa, out there in the fields with my dad and my mom. And that was really important because it understood me, or it taught me to understand how we need to work with our hands. How we need to work with our hands, respect those that do. That's one thing that binds all of us together, is that we respect people who work hard to do better for their families. So from that little dirt farm, I went off to Iowa State University. And now Jeff mentioned that I served in the military, and it was when I was at Iowa State that I did join the Army ROTC program. And a lot of folks have asked me through the years, Joni, how's it that you ended up in the military? You know, how did you decide to do that? You know, oh, Joni, you're so little, you're so cute. You know, how did you go into the military? And I explained to them that while I was at Iowa State University, I had the opportunity to go on an agricultural exchange between my freshman and my sophomore year. And that agricultural exchange was to a country called Ukraine. But back when I was in college, that country, Ukraine, was part of the former Soviet Union. So at 19 years old, I traveled to the Soviet Union, went to Ukraine, went out to a collective farm. There were about 18 of us on this trip from Iowa. And all of us stayed in a different home with farmers on that collective farm. And I started noticing something very different, because you know what? The United States at that point was a world superpower. We still are today, but a world superpower. The Soviet Union, they were a world superpower. But when I got onto that farm, what I saw on that farm was very different than the farming I experienced in Iowa. So how many of you have running water? Oh gosh, I hope all of you do. Okay, well, on that farm, they didn't have running water. So every morning I would go out and I would crank that pump. I'd pump up water, carry it into the house for the day. How many of you have telephones? At least landlines. Maybe not even a landline, maybe a cell phone. Yeah, probably all of you. Well, 1989 in Ukraine, there was only one phone. And the collective manager had that phone. And if anybody wanted to use it, they had to ask permission. And the collective manager would want to know, okay, who are you calling? How long are you going to be? What's the topic of the conversation? Soviet Union. Very interesting and very different from what I was used to. So 1989, Iowa agriculture, we're farming, we have tractors and wagons. Ukraine, still farming with horses and wagons. 1989, they didn't have a refrigerator. The family I lived with did not have a car. They had one bicycle that they shared amongst those family members. So during the day, we'd go out and we'd farm out on the collective farm. It was tomato season then, so we were picking a lot of tomatoes. And in the evening, we would get together at the community center in what we thought would be a roundtable discussion about the differences between Midwest agriculture in the United States and Ukrainian agriculture on the collective. We didn't talk about that at all, folks. Not one iota. When we got together in the evening at the community center, the Ukrainians asked us, what is it like to be an American? What is it like to be free? What is it like to travel anywhere that you want to travel to without asking somebody's permission to do so? And you know what, folks? That made an impression on me. And so I'm flying home with our group of Iowa students. And as I was flying back to these great United States, and I've always been a proud American, I want to make that clear. I have always been a proud American. But after that experience on the collective farm, I knew that when I got back home, my life would be different. It was going to be changed forever. And I could no longer just sit back and enjoy the freedoms and the opportunities that are afforded by this great nation. I couldn't take it for granted anymore. It was up to me to support those freedoms, these great ideals that are spelled out to us. And so when I got back to Iowa State University, I decided I am going to take that leap of faith, and I am going to join the United States Army through the Army ROTC program, and I'm going to serve my nation. I didn't have money that I could give back in some form or fashion, but I did have my service. That's how I got into the military. And so while I have served for a number of years, and I just retired it's almost 2 years ago, I'd served a year in the United States Senate, and I decided to go ahead and retire from the Iowa Army National Guard. As a battalion commander, when I became a battalion commander, I gave these to my young men and women for really exceptional service. Now, on one side of this coin is the United States Senate seal, which is important to me. Now, this is, a Senate coin that I give out. The Senate seal's on that one side. But on the reverse side, I'll tell you what's on there. The Minuteman, because I retired out of the Army National Guard. The flag of Iowa, the flag of these great United States. But around the outer edge of the coin are 4 different things that are really, really important to me. And I've stressed these to my soldiers through the years, how important they are, and hopefully they will try and emulate these 4 pillars of success. The first one is assuming prudent risk. The second one is leadership. The third is service. And the fourth, and probably the most important to me, is gratitude. And I'm going to walk through a few of these. So the first one, assuming prudent risk. Now I'm going to challenge all of you, and I've talked to a lot of you that are elected officials. I've talked to some that are aspiring elected officials, just looking for a way in to serve their communities. I think that's really great. Assuming prudent risk. So service members, our law enforcement officials that are here, our first responders, they get this. They know how to assume risk. I think it was Jeff that was saying our first responders and law enforcement, they are running towards a dangerous situation instead of away. It's the same with our military, always advancing towards the enemy, never away. Assuming prudent risk, understanding what is good and right for you and your family and your community. You have to weigh, is it good, is it right, is it not? Is this a risk I'm willing to take? You know what? If you want to make a difference, you have to assume that prudent risk. You have got to get out of your bubble of comfort, and you've got to press on towards your goal or objective. You have to do that and make a difference. Our communities rely on that. Our states rely on that we will assume that risk for them. So assume prudent risk. The second thing is leadership, which I want to really stress tonight, because a lot of folks have come to me and they've said through the years, Joni, you're a battalion commander. You're a United States Senator. You're a leader. And I push back on that too, because a title doesn't make a leader. A title doesn't make a leader. We all need to understand that, because my definition of a leader and the Army's definition of a leader from 6-22 is a person who inspires others to follow them towards a common goal or objective for the good of the unit. The key word, inspires. You can be a specialist, you can be a sergeant, you can be a corporal, you name it, and you can be a leader. If you're inspiring other people, you are a leader. What we look for today shouldn't be a rank or a title. It should be someone who inspires. That's what we need more of in our United States government. Not just people who will go to Washington, D.C. and wear a fancy title. We need people that are willing to stand up, do what's right, and inspire others to get the job done. So leadership. We should look for leadership, no matter what the rank, the shape, the size, whatever. We should look for those that inspire. And I've seen a lot of really inspirational people here this evening. That's really important. The third thing is service. And all you have to do is look around this room to see those who have given service. You can look to your left and your right. There's all kinds of law enforcement officials here tonight, our first responders that have been recognized. And for heaven's sakes, I think there was just about every table that had a veteran at it tonight. That's service, folks. A lot of people out here have raised their right hand to defend our Constitution, our elected officials, our public administrators. And I think everyone probably in this room has provided service in some form or fashion. So most often we think of those associated with service as being those that wear uniforms. But I would tell you that also is not true. We certainly appreciate all that they do for us and our nation, but we can look around and we can see our school teachers. We can see those that work in the church. We can see those that donate blood. I mean, it can be something so simple to give back to our communities. And it's really important that we remember that and recognize that everyone has the ability to provide some form or fashion of service to our communities, to our state, and to our nation. Things so simple, but we can all do it. And then finally, gratitude. And this is really important and probably the most important one to me. And as I said, I give the challenge coins to those that have given exceptional service through the years. I think it's important that we all remember and recognize that none of us get where we are without having some sort of support system, whether it's our co-workers, whether it's our soldiers, whether it's others, our family, our spouses, our children. and that we need to take a pause and make sure we're recognizing them, recognizing our God for all the wondrous gifts that we have been given, recognizing our families for supporting us through really difficult times, thanking our colleagues for the support that they give us in the workplace, and thanking our religious leaders for making sure that we stay inspired. So I love to take the time and thank others, and it's really important. And I'm going to illustrate this point to you, that years ago when I was a battalion commander, I had the largest, at one point it was the largest battalion in the state of Iowa. It was 1,200 soldiers. And I had absorbed a number of companies from another battalion. So for about a year it was extremely large. My staff always knew that when we got promotion orders in that I had to sign, they would sit on my desk and I'd come in and I'd sign all those promotion orders. None of them would leave my office until they had a handwritten note attached to those promotion orders. It was really important that I thank those soldiers for their dedication and commitment to our great state and to the United States. And I didn't think anything about it until, it was just something I thought I should do, and it was really important to me. But after I was elected into the United States Senate, I had long left my battalion command. I was, off in Washington, D.C. And my staff brought in an email, and they put it on my desk, and they said, "Do you know this gentleman?" And I looked at the email, and I was like, "Yes, Sergeant so-and-so." And they said, well, here then, you probably would like to read it. And this young sergeant, I had promoted him while I was a battalion commander. And in his email, which he sent through that generic email system, through the United States Senate email system, he said, "I just wanted to take the time and thank you," because he said, "You wrote me a note card when I was promoted to sergeant." And he said, "You probably didn't know this, but at home I was having a really hard time because my wife was not happy with me taking a promotion and then looking at extending my service because he was coming up on re-enlistment." And he said, "My wife had told me, nobody appreciates you. You give all this time to the National Guard. You're gone on the weekends. You're gone in the summer. You're missing the kids' activities. They take you for granted." And he said, "And then I was promoted, and I brought home your note." And she said, "Re-enlist." The smallest things that we do can make such a big impact on others. I had no idea that he was having difficulties. I had no idea his wife felt that way. But it took just a small gesture to seal his fate for the next several years and allow him to continue doing something that he absolutely loved doing. So I encourage you to look around, see those that are setting great examples in your community, those that are standing up and doing the right thing. Thank them. Just take a small moment and thank them for doing the right thing, for moving their communities forward, for moving your state forward, and like Congressman Duncan, for moving the United States forward. It is so important that we take the time to do that. So right now, I want to thank our law enforcement officials for being here this evening, and those that couldn't be here because they're out actually defending and protecting our communities. Let's thank them, please. I want to thank our first responders as well. God bless them all for being there on the spot when they're needed. And for our military members that are serving both here at home and abroad, and all of our wonderful veterans here, God bless you for your service. And then, of course, I want to thank our host tonight. I want to thank Congressman Duncan for being such a good friend. Isn't he a good friend to South Carolina? And hopefully tonight you've been able to take away something from all of these wonderful, wonderful speakers. How much they care about South Carolina, how much they care about our nation. And hopefully maybe you can take one of my pillars of success away with you as well. Maybe assume a little bit more risk out there in your life, get out of that comfort zone, exhibit some leadership and inspire some other young people, maybe to get into politics or go out on a great adventure, inspire. Provide some service in some capacity, as small or as significant as you can. And then finally, with my gratitude, I want to thank the great state of South Carolina. I want to thank all of you. And of course, folks, God bless these great United States of America. Thank you so much, South Carolina. God bless y'all. Thank you. Thank you.
Senator Joni Ernst, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, get it up for her. She did a fabulous job. Joni, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We got another number from the Carolina Boys real quick, and I'm going to put my Texas hat back on.